What do two fearful avoidant attachment styles feel when they first meet each other, particularly in the dating and then honeymoon stages of relationship? Well, in this video, we are going to cover exactly that. It's a question I get asked all the time, and going to give you a bit of a roadmap for what to essentially predict if you are starting to date another fearful avoidant and you currently are one. And what we'll talk about is not just what to expect, what the early stages of relationship feel like and look like, but what you can sort of plan to experience as the stages progress later on. So, when two fearful avoidants meet and they start to date, they tend to really hit it off. I would definitely say it's sort of like fireworks in that early dating and honeymoon stage of relationships because they're very connected and very attuned. Fearful avoidants have a bit of a special superpower in a sense. Of being able to really see into people, deeply understand what people are looking for and wanting and needing. And so when we have two fearful avoidants who can make each other feel seen and heard and kind of mind read, in a sense, one another's needs, it creates this sort of unhealthy expectation for later. Because one of the rites of passage, when we talk about the different and sort of later stages of relationship, when we look at the power struggle stage, the biggest rite of passage for making it through the power struggle stage and into the stability stage of relationship is to be able to communicate. And sometimes how connected fearful avoidance can be early on and how attuned they are and how good they are at generally reading between the lines actually forms an expectation that they have for one another, where it's like, oh, you should just always know what my needs are. Shouldn't even have to express myself or communicate. But the reality is that's an impossible expectation to hold. So we'll often start going back to sort of starting the relationship with this like hyper attunement presence. Both fearful avoidants tend to really care about novelty and exploration. They may travel together or do fun things, and it can really be like fireworks at the beginning of a relationship. Now, they tend to both play it very cool at the beginning of a relationship. They usually both don't want to be too vulnerable, let somebody know how they're really feeling. They both want to pretend like, oh, we're just here for fun and this is great and it's easy. But fearful avoidants also have a tendency to sort of act like they're in a relationship without actually committing to a relationship. And they can sort of stay in that stage of dating for quite some time. And so we'll see here in that sort of early stage as well that once that bond has deeply formed, there can be this time where the pendulum starts to really swing from playing it cool into suddenly a lot more characteristics of sometimes possessiveness or jealousy can come online because fearful avoidant attachment styles, they are very charming, very charismatic, really make people feel connected, seen in the dating stage. But the moment they really attach to somebody, that's when a lot of the fearful avoidant components can come out. And that can be anywhere from 6 months all the way up to a year or a year and a half, where we start to sort of see some of those different dynamics unfold. And we'll start to see at this point that some of the fireworks can be really positive, but then we can also kind of have the more detrimental form of fireworks, where it's sort of more of like these explosive arguments or fights because both, once they really deeply connect, become very afraid of losing each other in some form. And we may have, with two fearful avoidance specifically, either two true FAs who, you might see in this case specifically, they can both swing anxious or avoidant, right? So what, let's say fearful avoidant number one is in their anxious side half the time, their avoidant side half the time. Fearful avoidant number two would sort of follow that same trend where they're also in their anxious side half the time, their avoidant side half the time, and that pendulum's really swinging. But we could also see a fearful avoidant with a sort of leaning to their anxious side and an FA with a leaning towards their DA side. And in that case, you might actually see that, one sort of polarizes and spends a lot more time in the anxious side in the relationship, while the other one becomes the more avoidant version of themselves. So once this like deep emotional bond has been built, once vulnerability is required, once there's some form of commitment, once they've expressed feelings or made sort of a step towards exclusivity, that's where we will start to see that the moment there's sort of this agreement between one another, now there's something that can be broken. And that's where we'll start to see a little bit of the trust wounds coming up for each of the fearful avoidants specifically. And so we may see some, second guessing the relationship, a lot of push-pull patterns, a lot of being really hot in the relationship, like all in, everything's great, or really cold, really withdrawn from each other, pulling away. And both fearful avoidants, actually won't get out of this push-pull dynamic and some of these really challenging situations with these high highs and these low lows until they both learn to be vulnerable and actually communicate transparently and vulnerably and share with each other in healthy ways and validate with, sort of validate one another, but also allow for themselves to be validated. And unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges in this early sort of dating and honeymoon stage is that fearful avoidants are so focused on, you know, sort of being appreciated by their partner and being seen as worthy by their partner, that sometimes we can put on a bit of a facade, right? Sometimes it's like, well, I don't want you to see that I have fears. I don't want to share that I have flaws because then you won't think I'm worthy of you. And both can actually fall into the trap of doing that, which can make them, get stuck in this dynamic of, not being able to move through the honeymoon stage and into the actual power struggle stage and then out of that in a healthy way. Because as long as we are holding back, as long as we are, afraid to really show ourselves or share ourselves, we can definitely see some of these challenges and pain points. And so the more the bond gets built, the deeper the connection becomes, essentially the more trust wounds come up, the more fearful avoidance, because they tend to have this deep subconscious fear of like, I will eventually get betrayed by this person, whether it's through the person cheating or leaving or getting bored and leaving, or me getting bored or leaving. There's this dynamic of seeing like these extremes and sort of expecting relationships to operate in extremes. And so another dynamic we'll also see with fearful avoidance is not just this assumption that the person will actually leave eventually, or that the relationship will kind of implode into chaos eventually, but also this idea that, the more I connect, the more deeply I'm going to be hurt. And so they get really locked into this push pull dynamic of like really wanting that connection, wanting that passion, wanting that deep intensity and care from their partner. But then the more it's there, the more they're also assuming that the hurt's going to come. And so it's almost like the pendulum starts swinging. And as it builds momentum, it starts swinging more and more to these really strong, like opposing directions where the extremes are getting wider and further apart with each swing of that pendulum between the good and the challenging in the relationship. And one other thing we might see quite frequently is that, as their feelings come online, fearful avoidants very easily get afraid of their own feelings. And so they can get into a dynamic of being really terrified of having different challenges come up, and really terrified of like their feelings really causing them to, feel too much, in a sense, is how you would hear it described from a fearful avoidant. And so a lot of these different things make a relationship really hard, especially because fearful avoidants can kind of lose themselves in relationships. They both tend to operate from this sort of enmeshed codependent space. And so they can start kind of losing themselves in a relationship, which then makes them want to kind of rebel and push the relationship away. And yet they're so attached that they feel this need to sort of come back and reconnect again. So I want to share with you that these are some of the most challenging relationship dynamics to be in. And I know, having been a fearful avoidant myself years ago, that as a fearful avoidant, and having been in a relationship with another fearful avoidant, actually, that was quite serious at one point, um, there was this really extreme feeling of, wow, relationships are so hard. They make me feel way too much. Too many good things, but then too many bad things, and the good things scare me and the bad things hurt me, and it's all just chaos. And there's a lot of healing that needs to be done if you're experiencing that, because in a healthy, secure relationship, we don't feel overwhelmed by our feelings. We don't feel afraid of losing ourselves. We're not, feeling like the relationship has to take up so much space in our world. It doesn't have to be like the center of our universe. We can like keep a relationship to ourselves and have this really beautiful, empowered relationship at the same time. And so there is a course, if you want to check it out fully for free for 7 days. Plus, we also have a limited time discount tacked onto the back end of it if you want to check it out in the link down below. It gives you access for free to the entire personal development school, but specifically the course of two fearful avoidants in a relationship together. And what that course sort of provides is essentially a roadmap for what that will look like, what some of the different challenges will be, how to work through those challenges, how to reprogram those core wounds, how to communicate differently, how to talk about your needs so that you can maintain that progression in a relationship, rather than feeling like it's just so overwhelming that eventually it wears on you so much, that it starts to really wear the relationship away too. So I will put a link down below to that.
So I just wanted to stop by here and let you know a really exciting announcement, and is that we are doing $1,000 off of our lifetime memberships to the Personal Development School for Life. So I will tell you what's actually included in there. Number one, you get access to all of our different 60 plus courses. Everything about every single attachment style, how to reprogram, how to heal. We have courses in there about the 6 stages of relationships and how to navigate each stage. We have courses in there about how to get back together or heal relationships between different attachment styles and all of the steps for reconnecting. And we have all sorts of other courses on boundaries, conflict communication, setting and achieving goals at the subconscious level, seeing how attachment styles even show up in your workplace and how to navigate some of those different dynamics and heal those aspects of your attachment style. There's so many courses in there, but number two feature that we have, daily social support groups. So these are small groups that are all included in the lifetime membership, and we do daily events, sometimes even twice a day, where there will be, 10 people or so led by a trained counselor, coach, or facilitator. And you can actually join in there and practice some of the different tools with other members. It's a great place to build relationships, connect with like-minded people, and to really fast track your learning and have that extra support all the time. And number three, we have daily webinars Monday through Saturday. I do 3 of those webinars every single week. That's the time to come in, ask me your questions. You can come in on camera and we can chat. You can come in off camera and just post them in the chat, whatever you're most comfortable doing. And we have other amazing counselors, coaches, facilitators who also lead other webinars. And again, those are slightly larger groups of people, but it's a great opportunity to connect with like-minded learners who also care about the same things: emotional connection, relationships, and personal growth. So I hope you check it out. We also have all these different discussion forums in there. We have a Facebook group so you can connect with each other there as well. And there's a tremendous amount of community support in an ongoing way at PDS. So I would love to see you on the other side. I hope you join me. And now we'll go back to the video.
And if you stay tuned, I'll be sharing other parts sort of in a series here of not just what the relationship feels like between two fearful avoidants, but some of the different needs and communication patterns and other challenges, with some tools that you can sort of workshop in there as well. So stay tuned for later parts of this series. I hope you enjoyed this first video. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you want to see more fearful avoidant content with two fearful avoidants together in a relationship. And if you have any other special video requests, please also let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos.